Here on the lawns of Parliament, David Spears, our political editor, and joining us is Liberal frontbencher Steve Ciobo. Steve Ciobo, thanks for your time. Quite
pleasure.
A day. You voted for Malcolm Turnbull to become the new Prime Minister?
Well, I'm not getting into who I voted for. I've been asked that question multiple times over the last 12 hours. And what's important is where the party room went. The party room has delivered overwhelming view that Malcolm Turnbull should be the new leader of the Liberal Party. Therefore, of course, the new Prime Minister. We strike out with Malcolm as leader now. Some new policy directions, but still embracing, of course, some of the correct decisions that we've made in the past.
What will be the new policy directions?
Well, I think that'll be revealed in the fullness of time, David. The fact is that Malcolm Turnbull is a different guy to Tony Abbott. Of course, there's a lot that they share in common. We're all members of the Liberal Party. We are a broad church, but there's also some areas where they're different. In part, I think the party room was responding to the electorate's perceptions around the two leaders. Ultimately, what those policy changes will be subject to cabinet processes. Malcolm's gone to great lengths to explain, and we'll see in the fullness of time.
Was this part of the private conversations going on over the last day or so?
No, look, I think this conversation has been ongoing now for a long period of time. I mean, let's not pretend it sort of all happened in 6 hours. Fundamentally, it comes down to this. As a coalition now, as the government, we've got a new leadership team. We've got a new leader, a new Prime Minister in terms of Malcolm Turnbull. There's a whole raft of areas where our policies will remain the same because, frankly, they were good policies, but then there'll be new areas where we'll make changes.
Well, as you say, we can't pretend this all happened in one day. The conversations have been going on, as you say, a long time. How long? When were the conversations begun about replacing Tony Abbott?
Well, look, ultimately for every single one of us, we are representatives of our electorate. We have the unique privilege of representing 100,000 or so people. You're constantly given feedback from the community about we like this, we don't like that, what can change, so on and so forth. For every single one of us that are members of the coalition, the feedback has been, look, we like these things, but we'd like to see improvement in these areas.
We don't like
the party room was responding to some of this feedback. We saw the vote that was taken. The vote last night demonstrated in a very palpable sense that they wanted to have new leadership. Malcolm Turnbull's the guy. The party room now closes in behind Malcolm.
And what do you say to the suggestion that this reflects a system that's broken?
Look, I think it's probably more accurately reflects what are pretty complex and turbulent times. Whether it's Australia or the United States, Europe, the fact is that we are in a relatively unique period of history. I mean, it's not been business as usual. There's been a lot of economic tumult. We've had the global financial crisis. I mean, on many measures, the period that we've just endured has been akin to, not as bad as, but akin to the Great Depression. So we've gone through a pretty tough time. So is it appropriate that politics perhaps reflects some of the community angst? Yes, I think it is, but that's not an excuse to keep doing this. It's a reason that perhaps explains why what's occurred has occurred.
How important is it for Mr Turnbull to bring those elements of the party with him that didn't support him and that aren't really aligned to his side of the party, the more conservative elements? What's your view on that? How important is it that he keeps those cabinet ministers and others in the tent?
Well, look, obviously, it's the old maxim, political parties that are divided fall. It's that simple. So we need to be a united team. The great strength, and I really believe this is a real strength of the Liberal Party, is that we are a broad church. John Howard used to speak eloquently about it on many occasions. I mean, it's good to have a political party that represents a broad sweep of views. Ultimately, embracing all those views and providing the leadership is going to be the challenge for Malcolm. I think he'll do a sterling job. He's been leader before. It was a single policy issue that brought him unstuck, but he knows what it takes.
Just getting back to the point Kieran was making now about whether the system's broken, and you talk about the volatile international climate, and that's certainly true economically, but politically, we've seen the same president in the United States for the last 5 years, the same Prime Minister in John Key in New Zealand, the same Prime Minister in the UK. We've had 5 in the last 5 years here in Australia. Something's not going right.
Well, I think it demonstrates that Australians aren't happy with where things have been, and that's understandable. But ultimately, we need to remain focused on what we're elected to do. I mean, David, for any of us that are in politics that have to carry the the torch on behalf of the community to make decisions around where our nation should be going, the kinds of policy challenges we face, how to get the appropriate balance between debt and providing the services and infrastructure that the community needs. I mean, these aren't easy calls. They're really tough calls. That's what we're elected to do. I think for all of us, we've got to make a decision about who the right person is to lead the nation in that respect. It's not straightforward. The community is also speaking. I mean, you also just can't turn a blind eye to what the community is saying to you either. You need to be responsive to community feedback.
Okay, and finally, how important is it? You're tapped into the business community quite strongly. The argument is that, and certainly it's a sentiment that we've picked up, is that they want a bolder reform agenda.
Sure.
How confident are you that the new Prime Minister will articulate such an agenda?
Malcolm Turnbull's a man who has obviously a great wealth of commercial experience. Malcolm's got incredibly strong links into the business community, into the commercial world. I ultimately think that that's really important because it's going to help to drive the decisions that we make as a government, the kinds of policy changes that we put in place. Clearly Australia does need reform, but by the same token, let's not kid ourselves, there's some degree of reform fatigue in the community, and again, it's about getting that balance right.
Steve Chabot, thanks so much, appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Time for a quick break on AM Agenda, this special edition of AM Agenda after an historic day here in Canberra. Malcolm Turnbull to be sworn in as the 29th Prime Minister later this morning.